Yeah.
Live.
Yep.
Like it's setting up. Okay, I think we're live. All right. Hey, Jackie, how are you today?
I'm doing good. It's a good day.
Thank you so much for being here. Hey everybody, I am live today with Jackie Kotei. I am really excited for this interview. So, Jackie is an award-winning journalist and media strategist. She's a wife, she's a mom, a philanthropist, she's an international speaker, just a total powerhouse of wealth and wisdom. And we're gonna just kind of pull back the curtains and get to see behind the scenes of how Jackie built this amazing business. So before I jump into all that, Jackie, do you want to just tell us, I mean, what did I miss? Tell us a little bit about you and your company, which is called More Good Media.
Yeah, so it's incredible being able to do the work I do with More Good Media. We really are about getting people that are doing great things in the world out there in media. Because when we think about just all the negative news cycle and things like that, it's just powerful to be able to hear about stories and people that are changing things, that are creating new things, that are pioneering and all of that fun stuff. So that's the work that we do. And I've been blessed to just be doing my life's work, my life's calling.
Mm, that is definitely a blessing indeed to know that you're doing your calling in the world. So, for those of you who might be new to me, I should introduce myself as well. I'm Lisa Limita. I'm one half of the duo over here at Rise Leadership Circle. As you just met, I'm here today with the amazing Jackie Kotei. And Kayla and I are doing this interview series where we are, as I said, pulling back the curtains on the businesses of 10 really successful entrepreneurs. And, one of the reasons we wanted to do this is because I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs, and especially when we're just getting started, we look around at entrepreneurs who are out there and it seems like it was easy for them, right? It's easy to look at someone else who's having success and say, like, oh, it must be so easy for her. And in reality, we don't see the struggle that maybe went on in the beginning or, what it was like. And so, we also want to empower women to invest in themselves, invest in their businesses, and we want to share what that looks like because it's different for everybody. So we're going to touch on that today. Before we jump in and you guys get to hear more from Jackie, I just want to share too, I'll share more at the end, but we've just launched our grant giveaway. So if you are an entrepreneur who is ready to invest in your business, invest in yourself, you can apply for one of our 5 $2,000 grants at Rise Leadership Circle. And I'll be dropping the link in here. You can go ahead. All you have to do is fill out the application. You can use this money any way that you see fit to invest in your business. It's an easy application process. And like I said, I'll say more at the end. But just know if you stay tuned, you're going to know how to do that as well. So, Jackie, let's just dive in with you a little bit. So, will you tell me, so you were am I correct that you were a broadcast journalist before you started the company that you run now?
Yeah, I actually have a background in journalism, and I spent a few years behind the scenes at first, working at like Dateline and ABC's Washington Bureau, like at the network level. And then I got my big break to be on television, and that in and of itself was a dream come true. And I did that for a few years. I lived that dream, I got that experience, but after some time, I just got really jaded. And so I was looking for a way to be able to give back and make a difference. And I was, growing and evolving. And so really that was my first like foot in the water at entrepreneurship because I kind of did that jump and the net would appear. And I left my TV job and I said, I'm going to start a company. And at that time, I didn't know what I knew now. And so I spent 30 days working on a website and making business cards, and only to find out that I had no idea how to get clients. I had no idea what to charge people. And so that was my first failed attempt at entrepreneurship. And I wound up going back to work, and I wound up being a government spokeswoman for about 6 more years. And that time I built my company while I was still working full time. And I spent about 2 years of the last 7 years still working full time while growing my company.
Oh, thank you for sharing that because I think it's so true. I mean, I think, number one, a lot of us do start out that way. We're like, oh, website business cards, I'm in business, here we go, right? But there's so much more to it than that. And I think many of us have had that experience.
Yeah.
And then also the experience of, the side hustle, like building the business while the full-time job is kind of funding the business. So I'm curious, like, was that was your full-time job sort of the first investment into your business? Is that how you funded it, or was there another way that you invested when you first got started?
Yeah, I love that we get to have these like candid conversations about the money, the behind the scenes. And so, yes, it's funny because I always talk about the fact that one of the scariest investments I made was actually hiring a coach. And I had had coaching in pockets before hiring a coach, but I remember hiring a coach. I still remember to this day, the monthly payment was $597 a month plus a deposit, and that was money that I didn't even have working a full-time job. It was so difficult, even working like a senior level position, putting together $597 a month to pay that coach. And at the time, my husband was livid. He was like, because I said yes. And he's like, where are we getting this money? Da, 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 da. And he was livid. And I remember that was my first real decision to say, okay, I believe in myself enough to bet on myself. And at the time, I wound up asking my mom if I could borrow some of. I was like, just let me get through the first 90 days. And so I was like, Mom, can I borrow $300? And then I called my student loan and I put my student loan on deferral to try to take some money from that payment. And that gave me the first 90 days. And I remember having a promise to my husband. I was like, I won't touch the household budget. I'll figure out ways to invest in it. And that was really scary. My two other investments that I remember being like a very like pivotal point. One was when I had to hire my first executive assistant, my first virtual assistant. And that was about a month after I had just invested in the coach. And I needed to hire her to put together a landing page and some stuff. And I think it was like $25 an hour. And I was like so scared I was going to get a bill back that was going to, but it wound up being about $150. But still, I remember being like, I don't have any clients. How am I even going to invest in a virtual assistant? And I tried to do as much of the project as I could so that I didn't have to pay. And then finally, I just could not figure out the software and technology. So that was another pivotal investment. And the third one I'll tell you about, Lisa, was I remember getting like this calendar scheduling thing. And I won't say the name because, there's lots of them out there, but it was like $14.99 a month. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't have $14.99 a month to spend on this software. Like it just felt, those three investments all were very early on when my coaching practice, when I really got serious about building it. And they all were very difficult investments to make. And when I look back now and I think about the fact that I've got things that cost $200 a month, and like way more, it takes me back to that initial $14.99 and feeling like I didn't even have that to spare.
Thank you for sharing that. That is so true. And I think, that's the unseen part that doesn't get talked about, and people don't see that side of the startup of a business. And so I really appreciate that you shared, this investment that was like almost $600 a month and your husband was livid. Like, what are you doing? Right. But you said something really important. You said you had to trust yourself enough. You had to bet on yourself that you could do this. And that was like your first real, what gave you the courage to say, like, I'm going to bet on myself here?
There were two things at that time. One was that I had just given birth to my son. And before then, I had had coaching like I talked about, but I had really done coaching in a barter like situation. I was really good at bartering. And so that had got me to the point of where I was, but I knew that I wanted to be a full-time, like able to be more full-time with my son. I wanted more flexibility. And so I think it was the urgency of having a newborn in my hands that I'm like, every moment I don't build this up is a moment away from him. And that was very real. It was a different level of urgency than I had had before when I was just kind of playing around. I'm like, oh yeah, I want to be a coach. I wanted this. The other thing for me was that I felt it in my gut that it was the right decision to make. And that was something I could not shake, even though I was it was hard to not be in alignment with my husband. It was hard to feel like I was defying him. Like it was very difficult, but I felt in my gut that it was the right decision to make. And so that was another thing. And I think just the timing too. I had worked a job where I felt underappreciated, undervalued. I felt like I had been, doing 60 hours a week, 80 hours a week, like hitting great milestones. And there was really no progression in my position and what I was being paid and all of that. And so that actually made me return back to entrepreneurship, even though I had failed in previous attempts.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, those are some things that you could have used as excuses. And all three of those things that you just mentioned, your husband not supportive, having a newborn, having failed in the past, those are places that I see hold people back, or those are actually excuses that stop people from going forward all the time.
Mhm.
So if somebody is listening right now, and this is you, if someone's saying, well, look, I failed in the past, or I can't now, my kids are too little, or I can't, my husband doesn't support me. I hear these things all the time. You guys look at what Jackie has done. She didn't use that as her excuse. She used it as the reason, right? You made it the reason. And then that, like, just trusting your gut and knowing, like, I can't shake this feeling. I just am trusting myself. I know I can do this. It's gold. So yeah, amazing. And I know there's someone out there hearing this who's like, okay, you've just given me the confidence to know I can do this.
Yeah, it's like the best way that I've heard it explained is like we all have 10 tests between us and where we are now and where we want to go, like what our vision is. And it's like, how quickly do you want to go through those 10 tests? Do you want to take 10 years to go through them, or do you want to take a year and just move through them? And I can tell you that the other side of each of those challenges is just so sweet. When I look at the company I have now, even being able to take time in the middle of the day, my newborn, I have a newborn now and again. So I've got a 4-month-old that's napping. I've got a household manager that my business funds that's doing our laundry and getting lunch ready for me. I've got beautiful tulips on my desk. Like there's so many things that when I think about the life that I live now, it's so much sweeter than any of the, like it was worth like the rough knees and the rough elbows to get through the challenges that I had to go through.
100%. And did I see on your website that your husband actually works with your company now as well?
Yeah, it's so funny.
Amazing.
It's so funny. Like, who could have written that ending to the story? I mean, it wound up being that for many years. I mean, now we have another division of our company where we're both CEOs. But who could have imagined that the decisions that I made 7 years ago, like those challenges that we went through, would have landed us where we are today, where we've been able to make multiple six figures. Last year was a record-breaking year, even in the midst of all the challenges that we've done, that we've gone through. And it's all because of that decision that I made early on to trust myself. And I see so often, like you said, people stop at those places, but I think that those places are the reasons why you want to push forward. It's almost as if God and the universe is saying, hey, you really want that successful company? Okay, let me give you this challenge to make sure that you've got the stamina for it, that you've got the endurance for it, that you've got the character for it, that you've got, what you need to be able to make the decisions that need to be made on a daily basis. I mean, I make more decisions now in a day than what I probably used to make in a month. It used to take me, I remember there being a time when I first started a blog, and you guys who are old enough probably remember when blogs were a thing. And I remember starting the blog, leaving it empty for an entire year. I couldn't even decide what the first post was going to be. I kept going to it. I'm like, okay, should I post this? What are people going to think about it? Am I this? Am I that? Like, and it took me a whole year to make a decision on like the postings on that blog. Whereas now I make that many decisions in a day. And so, yeah, it's pretty interesting how things shift.
It's amazing. It's the trust muscle. It's like you just build up that little, it's like going to the gym and you trust yourself a little bit and then you trust yourself a little bit the next day.
Yeah.
And eventually you're to where you are now, where you're just like, I'm making decisions all day long and I trust myself and,
Yeah.
I've got my own back.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is such a great story. I love that so much. So I was going to ask, like, how are you continuing to uplevel or to invest in your business? And I heard you say a house manager. You know, a house manager is definitely an investment in your business, isn't it?
It's funny because I just sometimes I'm like, I don't think people know what that is, a household manager. And so a lot of times I'm like, oh yeah, I haven't, this is my nanny, because it's the easier way to explain it. But it's interesting because now it's like I make so many different investments. And I think the better way for me to answer that is I'm always looking at making investments in a way that have a good ROI, a good return on investment. So it's easier for me to get creative. So even funding, we last year hired a homeschool teacher in our home when COVID hit. I got, like many of you, I don't know, but I went crazy. My kids are 7, 4, and now a newborn. And I went crazy trying to do kindergarten math and first grade. And I hated school and my son hated school by the end of the first month. And so, we wound up hiring that position. And I think a lot of times people are like, well, where do you get the funding for that? Or how do you like afford those things? And for me, I always look at it as, okay, with that position in place, what am I able to do in my business that can be able to have me maybe do more, make more clients or do more speaking engagements? Like, what does that position, what is it really worth in my business? And so that was one of the first positions that we hired. And when I just gave birth again, we hired the household manager, and we just moved things around. We're like, okay, well, maybe I need more, to invest more in here. And maybe I need to cut back, let's just say in Facebook ads, for example, or maybe, but that position has to, over a 90-day period, get to a point where it's funding itself, where because that position is here, I'm able to have more productivity. What is productivity worth to me? I'm able to have more energy to play with my kids at the end of the day versus trying to get all the laundry done. What is that worth to me? And so that's one way that I like to look at investments, because, there's always something to invest in. And there's some things that are like a black hole that you can invest in. But I think with those, like support for women, when you talk about how she did it, support is a big like part of the story for myself and so many of my colleagues that I talk to. Because if you want to be a great mom and be a great CEO and be a great wife and all of those things, you've got to there's no superwoman illusion. You've got to be able to invest in support and so forth.
Yes, thank you. And to let go of the guilt around having support. There's a little bit of that old paradigm still at play. Like,
Mhm.
that I hear it all the time. Oh, I feel guilty, or I feel like I should be able to do this all myself. And, it's like, look, that is an old paradigm that
Yeah.
is shifting. And it's giving up the like, oh, in order to create more money, I have to burn myself out or I have to work all this time. But it's actually the opposite, right? It's like
Mhm.
when we have more money, we can create more time for ourselves because we can invest, because we can have support. This is about, Kayla and I say all the time, it's about becoming well paid so that you can have a prosperous life, a
Yeah.
whole life experience, right? And be the mom you want to be, not the burnt out, exhausted, let me do everything and wear all the hats mom, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. And it's like the area of the country I live in, I'm in Maryland, just outside of DC. It's like the paradigm that I was raised in was you get a good government job, you do that for 30 years, and that's life. And I think whenever you're defying the old paradigms, you've got to be willing to just let it go. And sometimes I get the guilt. Like my dad is very old school. He's like, "You're not washing the dishes, you're not this." But at the same time, I just anchor myself in my vision. And my vision is to be able to do the things that I love. I don't ever want to be like, "Oh, well, because my kids were here, I wasn't able to grow my company." It's like, no, I want to be able to grow my company in spite of the fact that I've got young kids, and to be able to show what's possible. And so I think that that's been a core piece of how I've been able to do it, is with support, is with making sure that I'm investing in the right things, but also just being very grounded and hitting my goals and hitting the results that I put out there, because I also want to make sure that I'm not just chilling either. It's like I'm doing the work and having the faith that goes together to be able to create the results to keep moving forward.
That's so amazing. And our kids are watching that. It's like they're learning by example of like, oh, I can create the life I want to have.
Mhm.
And we're always leading by example. So that's an exciting example you're setting as well.
Yeah.
So I'd love to know, what's one thing you wish every entrepreneur knew about business?
Hmm. That's a great question. And I was just sharing this with some of the clients that I coach. I think that a lot of times entrepreneurs, and this is why I love this interview and I love what you and Kayla are doing with this series, is I think a lot of times people see the front end and they see the end result and they think it's like this funnel. Or I hear this all the time. People are like, I got all the download templates. I'm just going to put them together. I'm going to launch and then I'm going to make, fill in the blank. And what people don't often understand and realize is that it takes a lot of tweaks to get that result. For any result that you see out there, it wasn't just a cakewalk. It was like they had to, you do want to have a plan. You do want to have something that you're going to put out there, but expect the plan to be able to have to shift, and you have to be able to shift with the plan. There's been so many times that I've launched things and they've fallen flat. Well, do I give up the whole launch and say, oh, well, I guess it wasn't meant for me? No, that's when I got to say, okay, this is what I'm seeing. This is what's working. This is what's not working. Okay, how do I tweak the thing that's not working? We still got what, 30 days in this launch, or we still got to this result that we said we wanted to hit in order to go on that family vacation or order to do the thing that comes next. And I think a lot of times people just give up, or they just feel like it's just all supposed to be miraculous and pretty. And don't get me wrong, miracles happen all the time, but I think people really underestimate the amount of grit and determination and really the amount of tweaks that have to happen. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's important to have a coach, to have a mentor, because sometimes you can't get, even though I feel like I'm a brilliant strategist and I'm really good at messaging, like I'm known in the marketplace to be great at messaging, it's hard for me to come up with my own messaging sometimes. It's
Yeah.
hard for me to get out of my head with the things that I'm dealing with. And I think people just wait too long, those two things, to be able to A, get help, but B, I just think they really feel like it's as simple as it looks, and it's not. And that's really important. I think you can save yourself a lot of time and anxiety and all of the stuff if you just get, okay, I've got the plan. Okay, but this is why I need help to ensure that the plan actually happens.
This is so much gold. I think the businesses that don't survive, it is all about they just give up too soon, right?
Hmm.
They just weren't expecting it to be hard, or they weren't expecting to have any quote unquote failure. And so it's like they just give up and walk away. But
Yeah.
what you're sharing is just complete truth. It's all about staying in it and getting the learning and tweaking and keep going until.
Yeah.
And that's what it takes. There is no shortcut.
Yeah, and not being hard on yourself. I
Yeah.
spent the first, well, I'm 7 years into my business. I would say the first 5 years, I was really hard on myself. It wasn't until recently, about a year and a half ago, we started a new division in our company where we help people, entrepreneurs, get access to legal services. And that put me in a different environment with people that celebrated all wins. Like a win is like, oh my goodness, you did the launch, you go. The other community I used to be in was like a lot harder. It was like, oh my goodness, you did the launch and didn't make 1 million. Oh, you got to go back to the. And so that was another big lesson for me, was like, I get to celebrate the fact. And I would say that to everyone watching, that you get to celebrate the fact that you're even taking baby steps, that you even showed up for this interview today, that you're even taking part in the series to even learn how she did it. And so I think that that's a huge thing that sometimes is missing among entrepreneurs all around, because we feel like we got something to prove, and it's sometimes we just don't even acknowledge our progress. And I think I always like to tell people it's not about perfection, it's about progress. And so you may not have hit $1 million in your first launch, but at least you did a launch and had your first few people say yes. That's huge, especially if you've never had anyone say yes. you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. So I want to share with everyone a little bit about the grant that we have going on. And as I mentioned, this is we're giving away five $2,000 grants. And before I share, I'm curious if you had a cash injection in your business today of $2,000, like at the level you're at today, how would you use it to grow and support your business?
Oh, wow. So, oh my goodness, that's a hard one, Lisa. There's so many ways I could answer that question. So, one of the books that's been pivotal for my journey as an entrepreneur is called Profit First. And lately, that's how I've been using any kind of cash flow that comes into our company. So just simply, it's like you put 10% in a profit account, you put 15 or so percent in a tax account because you would have to pay taxes on that grant. You put 35% into the operating cost of your business, you pay yourself 35%. And I think 5% I tend to put in a slush account, a savings account for my business. So that would probably be the first thing that comes to mind. I've gotten myself in such a habit on that flow that that's what I've been really doing over the last 2 years whenever any kind of money comes into my business. The other thing I would think about is what might be something that might move the needle in your business. So a lot of times there's a lot of times we think about the cost of actually investing in something versus thinking about the cost of not investing in something. How much time does that cost you if you don't invest? How much energy, how much headache, how farther along would you be if you were to invest? So I would probably think about what's something that would really move the needle in my business, and that would be maybe the other way that I take that 2K and put it back in.
Yes, yes, yes. I love that. And just asking yourself that question, okay, what's the cost to not doing this? That is brilliant. And I think so much wisdom comes like, oh, right, we're looking at this from a new perspective. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being here. I want to share with you guys who've been watching, if you want to apply for one of these grants, just click the link. I'm going to drop it here as soon as we click off. I'm going to come back and drop it in here, and you just click the link, head on over to that application, just fill it out. It's not going to take you too long, and that's it. You're in the running. One thing that we're doing this time around is we'll be announcing the winners at our retreat, which is coming up at the end of the month. It's a retreat for female entrepreneurs, and it's just really fun. Last year, or the last time this was in fall, it was really powerful to get to watch the winners receive the grant and how excited to get to hear what they're going to do with it and all of that. So you'll get to come to the retreat for $1 if you choose. You don't have to come to the retreat to be a winner. But of course, we want to pour into your business because why not? We get to do this. So really excited to share that. I was sharing with Jackie before we hopped on live here. It was something Kayla and I, like right from the get-go, we were like, how can we do business different? Like, how can we do things in this way that like serves a greater mission? And it was this idea that we could create a ripple effect. And that's what I love about, I'm not saying men don't do this too, but that's one of the things I love about the community of women that we have around us, like Jackie, who are so open-hearted and just excited to like, yeah, let's do this together, right? This is about all of us rising together.
Yeah, I
So
love that.
thank you. Thank you for being here. This was super fun. And anything else you want to say before we end?
I just love the work that you guys are doing. I've always, Kayla and I just have such a special space together. And I love that she gets to do the work with you as her mom. And I think this is just the beauty of women coming together. And I love the fact that together we get to rise. And I think with all that's happening in the world right now, these are the kinds of places you want to be, places where people are passing on the wisdom, where they're passing on generous ways to fund your business. So I just love that you're up to that, Lisa. And I'm just so excited that we got to do this.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your story. And this recording will be available here as well. So you guys, if anyone wants to reach out to you, Jackie, they can find you online. What are some of the ways they can connect with you?
Yeah, so just find me on Facebook and just send me a Facebook friend request and let me know that you saw me here. And I'd love to connect and just see what you're up to in the world and go from there.
Amazing. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Bye.
Okay.